Hi, Commissioners. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody until we get started. We're just waiting, double checking to make sure we've got everybody on board and testing their stuff. So if you'll go ahead and turn on your cameras, we'll begin shortly, but I'm going to put everybody on mute for just a minute.
Rob.
Yes, Commissioner Cashin, I'm sorry. Chairman Austin, I think we're just waiting on one more staff person and then we can get started.
Okay, do we have all the commissioners on?
Yes, sir, we do.
Do we have all the commissioners on?
Yes, sir, we've got all the commissioners. I think we're waiting on Commissioner Coleman.
Robin, County Attorney Payne has joined the meeting as an attendee.
Got it, thank you.
Are we trying to get Commissioner Coleman?
Yes, I think staff are trying to work with her now.
Excellent. I'm on.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I believe we have everybody. For our news group who are asking to record, we are having some difficulty selecting that option on our side. So if you want to submit some information through the chat, we can try to work with you through that feature.
All right, were we able to get Commissioner Coleman on?
Not yet, sir.
Let's go ahead and get started. I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy schedule today to join us for this important issue that we're facing. We promise not to keep you, but so long. I do want to have our Emergency Management Director, Don Campbell, to kind of give us an update on where we are as it relates to the COVID, the vaccination, the infection rate, and that type of thing, so that we can have an update on where we are as far as the statistics. Don?
Good afternoon. Just making sure you can hear me. Thumbs up. All right. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Good afternoon. Good to hear and see everybody. Just very briefly wanted to provide a quick update. What we have seen over the past 3 or 4 days is a pretty dramatic increase in case counts. We were running at about the 110 to 115 cases per day over the last couple of days. Over the weekend, after those 72 hours, we received 600 cases total. So that's a fairly dramatic increase in our daily case counts that we received into the health department. Additionally, our hospitalization numbers are continuing to increase. We're just under 100 that are hospitalized here in Guilford County as of earlier today, which is up from a total of 8 on July the 1st. Additionally, the percentage positive of tests that we continue to receive back, in June, we had reached a low of 1.2%, and now we are running right at about an 8.5% for our 14-day average, with our percentage yesterday at 15%. So each of the metrics that we keep an eye on when it looks at the number and the load of virus in our community are all on the upswing and at a fairly dramatic increase in that process. So that's a Cliff Notes version of sort of the amount of virus in the community and the impact it's having on our community.
Don, can you briefly go over what Cone Hospital, if you have those notes, reported to us yesterday as far as the number of beds that they have occupied by COVID patients. We did invite them, but they was not able to have someone to participate on such a short notice. But we appreciate all of the information they shared with us on yesterday. But can you briefly outline, if you have that information, what they talk to us about?
Absolutely. So in summary for our hospitals, today our hospitalization numbers are 52 at Moses Cone, 18 at Wesley Long, and 19 at High Point Regional Medical Center, with a total of 89 individuals in the hospitals. Cone Health has continued to do a great job of modeling what they believe will be the impact from this Delta variant. And while I don't have their specific statistics in front of me, ultimately the concern amongst the hospitals is the long wait times in the emergency departments, the lack of bed space in the hospitals, the impact this is having on staffing as well. And we do know that that is continued to, or projected to, increase over the next couple of weeks, peaking to where we may be back at the 200 or so hospitalized in Guilford County at any given day. The other limiting factor that we currently have is that the Green Valley facility will not be reopened. And so Cone has done an excellent job of making plans to take care of those COVID patients in the hospitals that they have, as well as High Point Regional having some surge plans. But the concern right now is that the increase and the steady increase with the Delta variant may overwhelm our hospitals in the coming weeks.
Thank you very much. Any questions, board members, for Don Campbell? All right. Hearing none.
Chairman Officer.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, I do have a question
Okay, go ahead,
for
Dawn.
Don. Okay, since Cone doesn't have a representative with us today, Don, I'm hoping you or Dr. Van can just speak to what difference requiring indoor masking we expect it would make on hospitalizations and our positivity rates.
Sounds good. Dr. Van, are you able to answer that, or I'm happy to if you don't have the connection?
Sure. I hope you can hear me okay. Thank you so much, Commissioner Cook, for that question. So we know that the Delta variant, which represents pretty much 90% or more of the current infections that we are seeing right now, is highly transmissible. It transmits to 7 to 8 individuals from one person who's infected, compared to the variant that we saw before, which would transmit to 2 to 3 individuals. So having the indoor masks is going to prevent that transmission from happening in areas where transmission happens even more than in the outdoor spaces. So we know that this variant creates a different dynamic in the pandemic that we're in right now. I believe that Dr. Snyder from Cone Health, who's the infection prevention medical director, mentioned the fact that this is a new pandemic that we're dealing with due to this virus, and the masking is going to create that stop into the transmission that we're seeing right now. As far as percentages or numbers or data, it is very hard to provide those numbers, because all public health mitigation strategies, including masking, social distancing, hand washing, vaccinations, they all wrap around each other to create a layered approach in the protection that we're hoping to have in our community. Thank you.
If I could follow up with just another point of clarification for Dr. Van. Could you talk a little bit about how vaccinations fit into that layered approach? Because so many of the folks in our community have gone out and done, what we've asked them by getting vaccinated, and they were able to spend the summer without their masks. But now we're suggesting, and the CDC has suggested, that we need to go back to masking for everyone. So can you talk a little bit about what role vaccines are playing still?
Sure, I'll be more than happy to do so. And we have done a really good job in our community educating and providing outreach to our community members to educate them about the vaccines. We have provided them with a variety of options to get vaccinated. We are at approximately 50% of the total population being vaccinated at this time. This percentage does not show a overall protection for our community. We still need to work a whole lot more to try to get our community members vaccinated even more. We know that initially we've had some conversations about herd immunity at about 70 to 80% people that are vaccinated, but yet with this variant, that herd immunity might be a whole lot higher than we were initially thinking about. So how do masks come in place with vaccinations? We also know that the Delta variant can penetrate the vaccination barrier a lot more easier than the variants before, and that people that have been vaccinated are getting sick from COVID, and they can also spread it. So it is one piece of information and one piece in the research that has been done recently, that people that are vaccinated, they can carry the virus, but they can continue to be infectious. So while we're in this critical acceleration rate for the variant in our community with high community transmission, it is the recommendation of the public health department in partnership with the CDC and with the recommendations that we've gotten from the CDC that masks should be worn indoors regardless of vaccination status.
Anything else, Ms. Cook?
No, thank you.
Okay, I heard someone else that wanted to participate or ask the question.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Cashin?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Back to Don. Don, you mentioned that as of yesterday, we had a 15% positive rate. How many people would that transport to?
Give me just 1 second to pull that up. Don't have those numbers. So roughly, I believe yesterday, pardon me, I'm pulling up some data to make sure that I'm giving you the numbers that we have seen.
And are these people who are being tested, or these people who are being admitted to the hospital with symptoms?
Okay, thanks. So yes, yesterday we added 124 new cases into Guilford County. Those were positive cases for Guilford County. The percent positive is calculated by all of the tests that are reported to North Carolina DHHS in a given day from all of the vendors. So that could be from the health department, from StarMed, from CVS, from Walgreens, to the hospitals. So those could be anybody getting tests for any reason. And so as those tests are put in, the percent of positive that are returned is what we are looking at, which is just a general idea of how much virus is in the community overall. We do have a lot of tests being done daily. We had dropped off just a little bit in the summertime, or excuse me, in early July, when there was not quite as much testing happening, but as late as the 4th of this month, we had almost 2,500 tests done in a given day, which is even more than we had last fall. So we still have a lot of testing going on in our community.
Thank you.
Any other board member have any questions? To Don?
Commissioner Austin, I have a question.
Dr. Van, Mr. Upchurch.
Yes, Dr. Van, I just want to ask you some questions about some statistics. At what level do you start to become concerned and think that we do need to mask up and start some preventative measures so we don't end up in a situation where we have to lock down again? Are you looking at the number of hospitalizations, the number of cases? Are you looking at the death rate, the percentage of positive tests? What exactly are you looking at?
Thank you, Commissioner Upchurch. This is a combination of metrics that we have been looking at over the last year and a half. So it is not one particular metric that we're looking at. we are looking at all of the metrics that you have just listed. So we are looking at the hospitalizations rate, we're looking at the new cases or the incidence rate, the positivity rate. We're looking at all of these numbers combined that show us the level of community transmission, the risk that we have in our community, the risk that is being posed to our schools, to our other environments. So it is a combination of metrics. No one metric can give us the best answer, but together we can have a very good idea of what's going on in our community.
Are you looking at the numbers by themselves, or are you making decisions based upon the increase in numbers? I'm just trying to get an idea for myself and for the public who's watching exactly how are we looking at these numbers. I think that over the last year and a half, there's been a lot of information put out there. And I think for transparency for us and for the people watching, they need to know, are we looking at the increase in these numbers? Are we looking for specific numbers, know exactly what we're looking at, so they at home can keep track of what's going on and they can see where we're at and if we're close to being in a situation that is looking positive or negative?
Sure. So on the healthyguilford.com, we continue to post data on our dashboard of all of the metrics that we're taking into consideration and all of the metrics that are showing the trends in our community, all of the new cases and positivity rate and so on and so forth. So we want to make sure that people continue to look at those numbers. Positivity rate overall, it is something that we're looking at 5% or less. New cases that we're seeing, we're using various algorithms to show that, and all of those are posted on the healthyguilford.com.
Thank you, Dr. Van. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Further questions of Dr. Van or Don Campbell?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Perdue.
Thank you. Dr. Van, what scientific data or experience have other areas, both in the U.S. and outside, had as a result of a mask mandate on the outcome of Delta variant? And also, what is the goal of this particular mask mandate? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Perdue. And unfortunately, I will not be able to fully answer that question since we've seen the Delta variant taking over the new infections all over our state and the United States over the last 3 weeks. So I'm not aware of any mask mandates that have been put in place during this time. However, just like with any other public health measures that we have put in place over time, we know that the masks are an effective way of stopping the spread of viruses in general, including COVID-19 and the Delta variant.
All right. Any other questions from any other board members? And let me say this before we go too much further. I'm referring to our participants, not our commissioners, as board members, simply because we are convening today as the Board of Health, not as the Guilford County Board of Commissioners. We serve in a dual role as county commissioners and also as the Board of Health. We're convening today as the Board of Health because we're considering implementing a health rule for the county and not in our capacity as county commissioners. So I want to make sure that that's clear for the listening audience. We are assembling today as the Board of Health, not as the Guilford County Board of Commissioners. Okay. Further questions for Mr. Don Campbell and Dr. Van?
Mr. Chairman, I had a couple of questions.
Hey, Mary Beth.
Thank you. Dr. Van, I was wondering if you could circle back to the conversation earlier about our layered approach to mitigation. I was hoping that you could talk just a little bit about the effectiveness of the vaccine with regards to the Delta variant. Obviously, we know that the variant has the possibility of crossing that vaccine barrier, but can you just talk briefly about its effectiveness with regards to, protecting people against the Delta variant?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Murphy, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to continue to emphasize the fact that the vaccines are safe and they are efficient. We are talking a lot about the Delta variant's infectivity and transmission and potential for surge in cases in the community. However, we want to reemphasize the fact that the vaccines are efficient and they continue to work very well. We are learning about new research that is coming out of Canada and States, United Kingdom, I apologize, that showed that there is a slight decrease in efficiency with the Delta variant, anywhere between 10 to 15% less efficiency. But when we're talking about a vaccine that it's more than 80% efficient, we are still in pretty good shape.
So what I hear you saying is that the vaccine is still a highly effective way to protect against the most severe forms of COVID-19, particularly with the Delta variant. And so continuing to encourage people to get the vaccine is going to, help continue to protect people from the worst effects of the Delta variant. Is that what I hear you saying?
That's absolutely true.
And so just to circle back as well, when we're talking about this layered approach, masking along with being vaccinated can help prevent people who might be asymptomatic and vaccinated from inadvertently spreading the virus to folks who potentially are vaccinated, but also to those who are unvaccinated, correct?
Yes, that is correct. That is a combination between the vaccination and the masking, because we know that right now we do not have enough people who are vaccinated, and that continues the cycle for hosts to be available for transmission. And it continues to create the perfect environment for the virus to adapt and for it to mutate and creates these variants that are becoming more and more concerning over time.
Thank you. And I just had one last question. Can you talk a little bit about the dispersion of the virus across different age groups? It seems that when I was reviewing the dashboard earlier in the week that we're seeing higher infection rates among people under age 49. Obviously, children aged 2 to 11 are not eligible for the vaccine yet. Can you just talk about how the Delta variant is impacting age groups maybe differently than the previous iterations of the virus?
Sure, and I'm going to ask Mr. Campbell if he can share some of the data since he had an opportunity to look at that over the last couple of days.
Thank you, Dr. Van. Thank you, Commissioner Murphy. A couple things that we've identified. One, and this was also identified in Cone Health's numbers yesterday as they presented them, is that the average age of individuals that are being hospitalized is definitely decreasing. Originally, those were much higher age ranges in the 60 plus age range. I think the median they mentioned yesterday is now down to 55. And as we look at the data from what we're collecting in Guilford County of positive cases, what we identified during the first week of August, during the first week of August, that children under the age of 20 made up roughly 22.8% of new COVID cases coming into Guilford County. In and of itself, that doesn't necessarily strike that much, but since the beginning of the pandemic, that percentage was closer to 11%. So we've gone from 11% throughout the entirety of the pandemic to 22.8% at the beginning of the first week of August. So I think one of the things that we're definitely seeing is this is impacting individuals at a higher rate that are lower. Now, I think one of the other sides is that is because the vaccination rate of those individuals is lower, either because they've chosen not to do it or because we know the population between 0 and 11 years old are not eligible for vaccines at this time. I think one of the other striking elements about the age range going down is that we're seeing these numbers in August before our universities come back and before our schools come back. And so we would anticipate those numbers continuing to grow as we congregate a little bit more.
All right. Anything else, Commissioner Murphy?
No, that's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Conrad, I see your hand waved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize in advance. I'm having camera issues with my laptop, but I am here and paying attention. Dr. Van, I had someone call me today that was vaccinated and a little frustrated, and actually referenced the fact that this constituent believed moving to a mandatory mask mandate would actually provide a disincentive for people to get vaccinated at a time where we're currently struggling and we're seeing those numbers go down and have been for some time. How would you respond to that and the feeling for people that said, we listened to health officials who said, get vaccinated, we get vaccinated, and we're still right back in the same position? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Conrad. And the recommendation for masks to be worn indoors, regardless of the vaccination status that I have made to the board and to the chairman, do not take out the vaccination urge to our community. This is not a vaccination or a mask. This is a vaccination and a mask to prevent the community spread even better. Thank you.
I think to add to that, if I can, just very briefly, we know that those individuals that choose to get vaccinated right now still have about a 35 to 45 day window until they're fully vaccinated. And we saw a great turnout this past Saturday for a vaccination event as individuals are really focusing on that. We're excited to see the uptake in vaccination. Unfortunately, because it does take 2 doses for many individuals to make that happen, and there's a waiting period between the 2 doses, we know that masks are really important in the here and now to try to quell this tide of these oncoming cases that we're starting to see. So that's really that layered approach to be able to get our percentages that much higher.
Thank you, Dr. Van, Dr. Van, and Mr. Camp. Further questions?
Yeah, not a question.
Commissioner Foster.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Dr. Van has talked a lot about the layered approach, and certainly we know that that is what we would all like to see happen. But Dr. Van, absent of the vaccine, for those people who choose not to get vaccinated, is the mask the next best measure or approach to impact or deter the spread of the virus?
Yes, Commissioner Foster, that is the best next approach.
Okay. So that we're not requiring any people who do not want to get vaccinated or for whatever reason are not getting vaccinated to get vaccinated. We're simply saying that absent of the vaccine, if you choose not to be vaccinated, then the next best thing is to wear the mask. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Board Member Foster. Further questions from the board members? Here, I hope that you all received a copy of the proposed rule that we're considering implementing today and had a chance to gloss over it. I call your attention mostly to pages 4, 5, and 6, and most of it at the beginning and some of it at the end, 7 and 8, was just boilerplate. But I'm asking the county attorney to go over it briefly. I don't think you have to go. But if it's here to do, I would appreciate that. Okay. Mr. Mark Payne.
All right. Thank you. While I'm trying to get my screen to share, let me start with a couple of points. The Guilford County staff was tasked with the job of creating a Board of Health rule that would include a mask mandate. Fortunately, we had some things that we could use as a basis to work from, and most significantly, we could work from the prior Board of Health rule that this Board of Health adopted in December of 2020. As you look at this, you'll see a lot of things that are similar to or adapted from that prior Board of Health rule. Also, Durham County has adopted a mask mandate, and we used that to help guide us in this. And also we used some of the prior executive orders issued by the governor about masking and used all that. So we have a Board of Health rule that is hopefully satisfactory to the board. It's also consistent with and follows some of the guidelines that we've used in prior Board of Health rules and that the governor has used in his executive orders. Let me see if I can get the screen to, let's see. Okay. Here you've got the Board of Health rules that was forwarded to you folks. And I'm not gonna go over word by word, but wanted to tell you a little bit about what this does. Also, I wanted to note that Guilford County staff worked together on this. This was a group task by a lot of folks. So some of the other participants may jump in and comment on this here and there as we go through. This was a group effort. The Board of Health rules, the first is very similar to what you saw in December. We've expanded and modified the findings to talk about the current threat of the Delta variant. We've used the same definitions that we've used in the past and that other orders related to COVID have used. Here in section 4 is more or less the meat of the whole thing. Board of Health will enact the following restrictions on operation of offices, business establishments, and other public places. So we're asking individuals to wear a mask in these public places. We have some exceptions that are also should be similar to everyone here. You have 10 exceptions. Legal staff was looking at this right before it sort of went to press, as it were. And one of the things that we thought about is, and are making it as a suggestion for the board to consider, is adding an 11th exception, and that would be for individuals who are alone in an enclosed space in an office. So in other words, if you're alone in an office and you have a protection from other folks and separation, that you wouldn't need to wear a mask there. I think that's sort of implied in this whole thing, but I think we should make it explicit. And so our suggestion is for us to add that 11th exception.
Okay.
This also has, similar to the Board of Health rules that you adopted in December, this also has an enforcement component. The enforcement component, again, emphasizes that the first priority is education and a warning. Our goal is not to issue civil penalties. Our goal is to get compliant and to get people masked and to be safe. But we do have that enforcement component that we had in December. We have it in this as well. You'll see that the sanctions here in section 7D sets out those sanctions. Again, require a first warning, and we will do not, under this Board of Health rule, we do not issue civil penalties for the first violation. That's a warning. After that, the enforcement officers can, in his or her discretion, issue penalties of $300 for the first violation, $500 for the second violation, and $1,500 for additional violations from the same party. Again, we also have the option that we did not use in enforcing the prior rule, and I hope that we won't have to use in this one, but we do have the enforcement option of a sanction that would be a cease and desist, and we can under an abatement order shut down an operation. Again, we didn't have to use that last time, and I suspect we will not have to use it this time. But I think it's an appropriate enforcement tool to have at the ready. That was a pretty fast walkthrough, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Let me, before we go into detailed discussion, let me hear a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to approve the proposed Board of Health COVID-19 mask rule as presented today on August the 10th, 2021.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, then moved and properly second. Now discussion on that motion. Any questions or statements any commissioner or board member would like to make, or questions from to Mark concerning the proposed rules?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Cashin?
Yes, it's a question for Attorney Payne. I saw a question posted, and I think it's an interesting question of where does the money that might be collected from penalties, where does that money go? How is it used?
Civil penalties in North Carolina go to a fund that goes to the public school system. That's true not only of this Board of Health rule, but really any civil penalty virtually any civil penalty that's issued by the county.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Payne?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have my hand up. I don't know if you see that.
Mr. Conrad, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Conrad.
Sorry, I accidentally muted myself again. Mr. Payne, there are a couple things in here that I thought we addressed the last go round on some of our board concerns. I'm pretty sure we had consensus on those. Specifically, you have a included an enforcement where the public health director or designees is listed, and there is no qualifications on the designees. I think we changed that the last time to be county health employees that had to go through a training.
To be honest, I remember the discussion. I don't remember that we made the modification, but if the board would like to make that modification, what was the modification that was made before we deleted the or designee?
No, I thought that we had said, if I may say, that Dr. Van, she has a pool of folks that she would use, and one would assume that they would be county employees and not someone just off the street, and that they would be trained. She is the health director. She's responsible for anybody that represents her in that manner. So I think we gave her the credibility of being able to pick the person that she would want to represent and go out and make these assessments. So
I really think, Mr. Chairman, I think we have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure we made that a county or a municipal employee. We did include the municipalities in case one of our municipalities wanted to join in, and I do not think we did that. And I would say, even if we did, I would still have the objection that regardless of intent, that's not what this says.
Right. Dr. Van, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that working with Mr. Payne, we can definitely make any adjustments to the wording in there to say exactly what the chairman mentioned, that everybody that would enforce the Board of Health rule will be Guilford County employees. They are trained by our team, including myself, on how to conduct these visits and how to enforce the Board of Health rule. And they all have the skills and the knowledge that is necessary to carry this rule successfully. We've had months of history in which we have done this in a successful way. We continue to have those team members on our team. So we're going to continue to take advantage of their skills and expertise with this new rule that is going to be put in place right now. And I also believe that an interagency agreement has been set between the county and at least one other municipality if we need to have any additional help, when it comes to the enforcement piece. So the health department is definitely successfully positioned to take care of this rule moving forward.
So for clarification purposes, what you're suggesting, Mr. Conrad, is that the Board of Health or a designated enforcement officer who is a county or municipal employee. And if we did make that change before, I will track it down. And if it accomplishes the same thing, I would recommend to the board that we make that adjustment. And if we didn't do it before, I would recommend that we make that adjustment now.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. The other concern that I have about the language, it was not changed during the last time, so I'm not arguing that it was, but I'll reiterate my concerns from several months ago with the language of sole discretion. Sole discretion in this enforcement can be a very, very tricky situation, especially for someone that has the authority to potentially jail citizens. And that's what we have here for instruction, 6 months in the county jail. I think that is very concerning, and I have the object from that one. That was not changed though during the last one, so I'm not going to claim it was. Mr. Payne, I want to go to a different topic though, and that becomes legality and enforceability. And I know I've brought this up before, and as I'm sure you're also aware, there are multiple opinions on this, and were multiple opinions from the School of Government at the time. And to my knowledge, that enforcement question is still somewhat unanswered. There was I think from the North Carolina School of Government, you're probably familiar with an opinion from Mr. Trey Allen that spoke or had an article at length regarding the legality of enforcement, and then came back fairly recently after and made a comment about I think the Department of Justice had come out with another opinion. Those opinions, as far as I can tell, those spoke to executive order, and we are not talking about an executive order. We're talking about a county ordinance. So to my knowledge, I did a little research and look, I couldn't find anything that specifically addresses that. And I didn't know if you'd ran across anything that might help with the legality, because everything I'm seeing is this is still somewhat very much,
put that part of
yes,
somewhat up in the air. So
yes, your recollection is very accurate, and there is not a clear-cut answer as to whether or not a Board of Health rule has the authority to issue the civil penalties that you have in the Board of Health rule in front of you. So far, there's some opinion that says we think you can, and there's some opinion that says we think you can't. My opinion is that you can. And the distinction between this is, as you point out, it's a Board of Health rule. I think Board of Health rules through Chapter 153A and through 130A of the general statutes, that authority for civil penalties is there. And the main difference is that in the governor's executive orders, those were all based on the chapter of the statutes that talk about emergency powers, Chapter 166A. I think you have a very good argument that civil penalties are not appropriate for enforcement of an executive order. I do believe that civil penalties are an appropriate and legally appropriate for a Board of Health rule. But quite frankly, I don't think that answer can get answered until somebody challenges a civil penalty assessment and brings that issue before the courts. Because right now there is no court decision and no decision at all. There's just various people's opinions on that topic. So it is true that this may be subject to challenge, and we may learn that I was wrong in my opinion on that. I do believe, though, that this will withstand legal challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. I do appreciate your answer and again, reiterate my concerns about authority. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Conrad. Mr. Upchurch.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd like to make a friendly amendment to V. I'm trying to find it on my current screen. B right here. So I have a question for Dr. Van, and then depending on her answer, I might want to make a friendly amendment. Dr. Van, you said one of the benchmarks you're looking at is a 5% positivity rate. I know that also was echoed down from the state a few months ago. Can you just expound on that a little bit and clarify that 5% rule for me?
Sure. So we are looking at some benchmarks to take into consideration when we're looking at our metrics. And as far as the positivity rate, we would like to see 5% or less in our community. This has been one of the metrics that the CDC, the World Health Organization, as well as our North Carolina DHHS has also used in the past. So we would like to see that percentage less, 5% or less. And we were able to get to that over the course of 2 months in May and June. And then in July, it started going back up as we started seeing that Delta variant getting into our communities.
So you mentioned you'd like to see 5% or less. How long would it need to be 5% or less for you to feel comfortable that we're moving in the right direction?
Can you please repeat that? Let me see if I understand. How long would it need to stay at 5%?
Yes. So my question is, no, we're currently above 8%. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but we're over 8% right now. And you mentioned that one of the benchmarks we're looking at is 5% or less positivity rate. So my question is, how long would we need to be at that 5% or less positivity rate for you to feel confident that we're moving in the right direction?
So I think that it's important to continue to mention the fact that we're not looking at just one metric, such as the positivity rate, to determine where we are in our community. The positivity rate is just one metric out of any. So it needs to be a continuous decline in all of the metrics for a sustained period of time of us to feel comfortable that our community has moved into a lower transmission than what we are in right now.
Okay, you said sustained amount of time. I don't mean to keep asking all these questions, but I think it's important. How long is that time? If we're going to have a positive, percentage of something, regardless of whether we get to that 70% or not. So my question is, how long does it need to be at 5% or less for you to feel confident that we're moving in the right direction? In section V of this proposed public health rule, it talks about further, it is also the board's intention to reevaluate this rule as circumstances change, including if and when the county's vaccination rate reaches 70%. I'd like to make a friendly amendment to that to also reevaluate the situation once we're at 5% or less, but I need a recommendation from you to how long it would need to be at 5% or less before we reevaluate the situation.
Thank you, Commissioner Upchurch, for that point. However, I don't believe that anybody in the public health or in the world of people that are dealing with response to the pandemic would be truly able to answer that question for you, because we don't have a specific time frame that we're looking at. So it is a continuous process that we need to reevaluate, that we need to find out what is going on in the community, and all of those metrics going down for a period of time is really going to be the way that we're addressing this. And when we're seeing any changes in those metrics, that's when we share those with you, with our other county leadership, and we're deciding which direction we need to go in.
Okay. Well,
Your Honor, if I may.
I didn't get an exact answer, so I'm going to make a friendly amendment that we add the 5% rule if there's positivity rate is at or below 5% for 3 weeks, and that we also evaluate in that if that scenario presents itself.
If I could offer a little bit of explanation on the language in section 5. It says as circumstances change, including the 70%, and with the friendly amendment, it would add or if positivity rate goes below 5%. Those circumstances, if the positivity rate is above 5% and you're at 69% vaccination rate, but your incidences of people getting COVID-19 plummets, then that circumstance alone may be enough to warrant pulling this Board of Health rule off. So that's why it says as circumstances change, because there may be something that we don't include in here that would make a difference as we evaluate the situation down the road. So I think you do have some flexibility to include other parameters as well. But and for clarification, is the motion on the table including the our recommended 11th exception about if you're alone in your office, and clarifying the language about the Board of Health's designee as suggested by Commissioner Conrad?
Yes. So I'm the maker of the motion.
All right, okay. The maker of the motion, were you accepting Mr. Upchurch's recommendation?
Well, based on the county attorney's explanation that there is some flexibility in number 5 that would include what Commissioner Upchurch is recommending, I don't think that is necessary to add that in, because beyond the 5%, there may be some other circumstances as well.
Yeah, but don't misunderstand me. It might be a good idea for this board to include that so that there's a stated marker out there that the public can see. I'm not suggesting that it's not necessary. I just wanted to explain to the board that there may be some other circumstances that come into play that would change the board's need to move forward with this.
Okay, then yes, I will accept the friendly amendment to the motion and also include the 11th exception and the clarification of the language that was suggested by Commissioner Conrad.
Is that okay with the seconder of the motion? Mary Beth, I believe.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Upchurch?
No, that's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Perdue?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on that last discussion real quick, as vague as some of this is, you could just put a period after circumstances change, because they're all random numbers picked from nowhere with no scientific data to show what that is. So if you put a period after circumstances change, you address what you guys are trying to do. Mark, under section 4, number 2, it states all businesses, establishments, and public places must require that all persons wear face covering when indoors on their premises. And then you've got some significant civil penalties, which I disagree with, related to that. How does a business or an establishment or a public place require, all they can do is make people aware that there's a rule. They can't mandate that people wear these face coverings. That's my first point. The second point is, if you look at number 6 under exceptions of section 4, it says is working at home or is in a personal vehicle. There are many people throughout Guilford County that travel in a company vehicle by themselves. The way this is worded, they would be violating the order to be in a vehicle by themselves. So there's several areas in here that I have question with. And when you create, this citizens arrest concept that I talked about when this was first put in and I voted against, people tattling on each other and calling and making requests of our public safety folks when they're already extremely busy and short-staffed. There's just some areas that are very unclear and will be problematic down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perdue. Ms. Cook? Ms. Cook, you still want to speak? Okay, moving right along. Any further discussion on the motion? Ms. Cook, did you want to speak? I see your hand raised. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I'm having a transition on my way to another meeting, but I did just want to make a comment about this decision that we're being faced with today. I, like many of my colleagues, have received a lot of emails in support of it and a lot of emails in opposition. And I want to express that my personal opinion is that I also agree that it's disappointing that we're at this point after all this time. I certainly enjoyed taking my mask off this summer as a vaccinated citizen, and I hope that we can get back to that soon. But I do see that if this is what it takes to keep our numbers low and therefore keep our kids in school and keep our businesses open and keep people able to work and provide for their family, then I think it's worth it. But I do hope that this board will continue to reevaluate on so that we can, continue to update as soon as we can. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none and hearing none, I'm gonna ask the clerk to call the roll for a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Commissioner Cashin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Conrad, how do you vote? Commissioner Cook, how do you vote? Commissioner.
Ms. Cook. She's still with us?
Yes, I said yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Foster, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Commissioner Perdue?
No.
Commissioner Upchurch?
Yes.
And Chairman Austin?
Yes.
Chairman Austin, that passes on a 7-2 vote.
All right, thank you very much. We would have some time that we would need to get this information out to all of our businesses. And I will hope that we do a press release on this as soon as possible to make sure that all of the press get it. The press that's on the Zoom call today will spread the word. And anyone else, any other kind of way, Madam Clerk, that we might be able to use as far as PSAs in order to get the word out, it would be great. All right. If there's nothing else to come before the board, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
did you state an effective date as this is effective as of a meeting?
No, this is effective as of Friday at 5 p.m.
Friday. Thank you.
Yeah, it's stated in the rule. All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moving and properly second, that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. So we stand adjourned. Thank you all very much. Be safe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank
All
you,
right.
commissioners.